Okay, let's come back to our second lecture today, Reformation in England. Henry VIII and the Reformation in England. England was known for Catholicism, but this Protestant idea started entering into England, and it was Henry VIII who brought this Protestant Reformation. As a result, and today England is even in the history we know that England has contributed so much to the entire globe. Because of this Protestant ideology in England took the gospel to across the globe. Let's go back to the roots and how England has been influenced by Protestant Reformation. The English Reformation. The Reformation in England also can be called as the English Reformation. Late medieval England had a reputation for maintaining the rights of the king against the Pope. Maintaining the rights of the king against the Pope. There was all the time there was a constant struggle between the church and the state, king and the Pope. Already there was splits. During that time, this Reformation idea spread. Religious leaders had called for church reform since the 1300s. By the 1520s, English clergy were considering with Protestant ideas. Already there were the waves of splits, and already they were just waiting for an opportunity to split from the Catholic Church. And by 1520, English clergy, the English bishops and the pastors, fathers were just waiting, and they started slowly receiving the Protestant ideas. England's break from the Catholic Church was not work of religious leaders. However, it was the political involvement. Henry VIII. The political reasons. Now, the Reformation in England, quote unquote, is not the spiritual revolution. It's not because the spiritual reasons they came out from the Catholic Church. These are kind of politically motivated issues brought the split between the Catholic Church and the Protestant, and the king was waiting an opportunity how to break his relationship with the Pope. He got an opportunity to side with the reformers, and that was whatever it may be, God in his sovereign knowledge, he allowed it. And the King Henry VIII, for political reasons, King VIII wanted to end papal control over the English Church. So at first, Henry VIII stood firmly against the Protestant revolt. Initially, the king rejected the Protestant ideas, and he hindered the ideas to get into the English. But the Pope even awarded him the little defender of the faith, awarded him the title Defender of the Faith for a pamphlet he wrote during Luther. During the Luther time, he was very firm not to allow that Protestant ideas to the English. So even he wrote a pamphlet on Defender of the Faith, and he supported the Pope and the Catholic Church. He was a Catholic in his theology and ideology. Let's look at the reasons, political reasons. In 1527, an issue arose that set Henry at odds with the church. It's all about the marriage to Catherine of Aragon. In 1509, Henry VIII had married Catherine of Aragon, daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, and the aunt of Emperor Charles V. By 1527, the union had produced no male heir to the throne, and only one surviving child, a daughter, Mary. No male child. You know, sometimes we blame only our Indian culture, saying that India, we have such a nasty cultural context. If there is no male child in the family, they go for second marriage, this and that. No, it was a kind of universal culture. It was a universal culture. Look at here, the Henry, since he was not having a male child, the whole issue was here, this one. Henry was concerned about the political consequences of leaving only a female heir. In this period, people believed it unnatural for women to rule over men during that time. They wanted a male heir in the kingdom. He wanted to have a male child. Because of that, there was a dispensation from Pope Pius II. Issue is here. Henry even came to believe that his union with Catherine, who had many miscarriages and stillbirths, had been cursed by God because Catherine had first been the wife of his brother Arthur. He married his wife's brother. He was not having a male child. A lot of miscarriages, and then children are dying. Only one female daughter survived. So he thought it is all because of his wife's curse, that there was a curse of God from her wife, who a church member, a Catholic Christian, because at that time the whole England was Catholic Christians. So Henry's father, Henry VII, had betrothed Catherine to Henry after Arthur's ultimate untimely death in order to keep the English alliance with Spain intact. There's a kind of political marriage. They wanted to have a peace with the neighboring state. That's the reason they brought that girl into the palace. It's all a kind of political strategy. They were officially married in 1509, a few days before Henry VIII received his crown. And later now he realizes, he feels, not realization, it was his feeling that God's curse was upon his wife. Because marriage to the wife of one's brother was prohibited by law, the marriage had required a special approval from Pope Pius II. In 1527, Henry was thoroughly in love with Anne Boleyn. Since he had negative thoughts about his wife, he was in love with the other woman, Anne Boleyn, one of Catherine's ladies in waiting. He determined to put Catherine aside and take Anne as his wife. He wanted to put her aside, otherwise he wanted to divorce the wife, and he wanted to marry this Anne. This he could not do in Catholic England, because England was very strong in Catholic. The prince or the king should be under the authority of the Pope. However, without papal termination of the marriage to Catherine, the only one solution for him to marry this Anne, he should terminate papal authority in his kingdom. That was the context. Look at here. Reformation Parliament, when the king's advisors could not obtain a papal termination, it's not easy to terminate papal authority in England because the people will revolt. They convinced of a plan to declare the king supreme in English spiritual affairs as he was in English political affairs. They want to declare king as the supreme even in the spiritual matters. It's kind of, they made a scheme in their parliament. In January 1531, Henry publicly recognized as head of the church in England as far as the law of Christ allows. So he pushed away the papal authority, and the parliament declared king as the official head of the church. Since then, Pope was the head of the church, but now king became the head of the church. In January 1533, Henry wed the pregnant Anne with Thomas. Cranmer solemnizing. Cranmer Thomas Cranmer was the father during that time. So he came forward to conduct the wedding. So it's a lot of big political scene behind this. If you are interested, read more literature, you will understand the whole background, what happened, what is the love story, and all those things. We are looking at the Reformation. What is the relationship between the Reformation and the king? Because now papal authority has been thrown out there. King was the authority. King had the authority of the church. King, the highest court of papal there in February 1533, the Parliament made the king the highest court of appeal for all English subjects. All English subjects should listen to the king. In March 1533, Cranmer became Archbishop of Canterbury and led a movement to invalidate the king's marriage to Catherine. Since he conducted the wedding, the Cranmer immediately became the Archbishop of Canterbury. We talk about the Archbishop of Canterbury. This is what the word, Archbishop of Canterbury, and led a movement to invalidate the king's marriage to Catherine. So the Act of Succession in 1534 made Anne's children legitimate heirs to the throne. It's all a kind of securing the throne. It's all about keeping his child on the throne. Henry VIII sided with the reformers, and that's the reason Reformation entered into England. The Act of Supremacy in 1534 declared Henry the only supreme head on earth of the Church of England. Anybody opposed, they were executed, killed, burned. When Thomas More and John Fisher, Bishop of Rochester, refused to recognize the Act of Succession and the Act of Supremacy, Henry had them executed, making clear his determination to have his way regardless of the cost. They were killed publicly. In 1538, Parliament dissolved England's monasteries and converts. All the Catholics and monasteries had been pulled down. The 6 wives of Henry VIII, he not only had the Catherine and the Anne, but the other 4 wives, total 6 wives of Henry here. To satisfy his desires and to secure a male heir, Henry married 6 times. His marriage to Catherine of Aragon was annulled in 1533. In 1538, Anne, as I discussed, was executed for alleged treason and adultery, and her daughter Elizabeth was declared illegitimate. And because he married a pregnant woman, as I said, you remember. Jane Seymour died in 1537, shortly after giving birth to the future Edward VI. Henry wed Anne of Cleves, sight unseen on the advice of the Cromwell. The purpose being to create by the marriage an alliance with the Protestant princes. Protestant princes, that's the reason Protestantism came there. The marriage was annulled by Parliament, and Cromwell was dismissed and eventually executed. And then, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th wife, Catherine Howard, was beheaded for adultery in 1542. Henry's last wife, Catherine Parr, a pattern of humanists and reformers, survived him. And then Edward VI. When Henry died, his son and successor, Edward VI, was only 10 years old. Under the regiments of the Duke of Somerset and the Duke of Northumberland, England fully enacted the Protestant Reformation. By Edward VI, since he was 10 years, during that time, whole England fully enacted the Protestant Reformation. In 1533, Catherine of Aragon's daughter succeeded Edward, who had died in his teens, to the English throne as Mary I, and proceeded to destroy Catholic doctrine and practices. Mary I wanted to proceeded to restore Catholic doctrine and practice. She wanted to bring back again Catholic theology into the land. There was a kind of struggle during that time. You may be wondering why these boring names and then England. We need to know the history. We need to know how the Protestantism, what all involved in that. So Elizabeth I, upon Mary's death in 1558, the throne passed to Elizabeth. Elizabeth had to determine the future of the Church of England, either Protestant or a Catholicism. Moved cautiously at first. She was not hurried. Slowly enforced a series of reforms that were later called the Elizabethan settlement. Elizabethan settlement, what is that? The Queen's policies were a compromise between Protestant and Catholic practices. She brought a middle way, compromising the Protestant and Catholic. The Church of England preserved much Catholic ceremony and rituals. Queen reaffirmed that the monarch was the head of the Anglican Church. She reaffirmed that the monarch was the head of the Anglican Church. That's how Anglicanism came. She was the head of the Anglican Reformed Church. Used her skills to restore unity to England, made England a firmly Protestant nation during her time. In 1559, an Act of Supremacy passed Parliament, repealing all the anti-Protestant legislation of Mary Tudor, asserted Elizabeth's right as a supreme governor over all affairs. Supreme governor over all affairs. Also in 1539, Elizabeth introduced the Act of Uniformity, mandating a revised version of the Second Book of Common Prayer for every English parish. Even there was a kind of spiritual reformation. In 1536, the issuance of the 39 Articles of Religion made a moderate Protestantism the official religion within the Church of England. 39 articles, in full 39 articles of religion, the doctrinal statements of the Church of England. I think I have posted this document, 39 articles. The religious doctrinal statements of the Church of England can be seen in that. Thanks for attending the class and watching an online or other mode of communication. Thanks to you for your presence. If you want to receive the lectures, you subscribe to the channel and be in touch. May God bless you. Have a blessed day.